This year we've spent a lot of time talking about organic gardening practices and other environmentally wise gardening choices. And just because the gardening season is over doesn't mean that you still can't be environmentally conscious when it comes to the garden and landscape. Take the Christmas season, for example. There's still a lot of things that you can do to incorporate into the holiday season to make it more earth kind. And let's talk about a few of those. To begin with, if you're one of the 25 million homeowners that use a cut Christmas tree in your home for the Christmas season, whatever you do when Christmas is over with, don't send them to the landfill. Check with your community to see if they have a tree recycling center. More and more of the communities are using these centers to recycle mulch for their landscaping and park practices. And if you don't have a tree recycling center in your area, you can either rent a chipper shredder, or you may even already have one, and be sure to cut up the tree and chip it up and use it for mulch, because it makes a great mulch in most of our ornamental landscape beds. Now, if you'd like to get more use out of a Christmas tree, you may be one of the many families who are going with what we call a live Christmas tree. And those are trees that are balled and burlap that after you use them indoors, you can plant them again back outside. Now, of course, the most important thing is you want to select a tree that is adapted to Oklahoma conditions. Some of those might be Scotch, white, or Austrian pines. The traditional red cedar that we have are the native red cedar and Leyland cypress. And the other thing that you want to remember is you're not to leave those inside for more than 7 to 10 days at the most, because the longer you leave them inside, like a cut tree, if you try to leave it in 3 or 4 weeks, it will actually be very harmful and may not survive when you plant it outside. You should also try to incorporate a transition period where you leave it in the garage before and after you take it into the home for a day or so, just to kind of acclimate it like we do when we put transplants out in the springtime. Now, some other ideas that you may want to try. A lot of people like to decorate outside with wreaths and different decorations on trees. Why not select some different types of decorations that might benefit our wildlife friends? For example, you could use an outdoor wreath, even hang it on your door, and then later remove it and take it out further on some trees that might be made of berries or seeds or sunflower seed heads, things like that that the birds would like. You can even string popcorn and various fruits and berries and put them on your tree. They're very colorful, plus they'll make a nice feast for the birds and squirrels. Now, one thing that goes on during the Christmas season is we send a lot of packages across the United States to our friends and family. And one of the things that we do is fill those packages up with a packaging material, and I think most of us are familiar with the styrofoam type peanuts. Now, these will not break down. They're not photodegradable or biodegradable, so they're very harmful as far as putting them in a landfill in most researchers' opinion. But even though they're small, they will add up, and they can be quite costly even at times when you put them in a landfill. So a lot of alternatives that are coming up are very much garden related, and corn seems to be the byproduct that we get these alternatives from. For example, have you ever thought about using popcorn as a packing material? It makes a great packing material. After it's used, then you can put it outside again for the birds and wildlife. But a real exciting product that's come out the past couple of years is called Eco Foam, and you can see it on the label here, and it looks like styrofoam peanuts, but actually it's a byproduct of corn made from corn oil or corn syrup. And when it comes in contact with water, and I'll drop a few in here to let you see that, like in a landfill, they actually dissolve. And I'll tip that up, and you can see some of them that have already dissolved that we put in a little bit earlier. So that's real exciting. It's a byproduct of the garden from corn, and it's very environmentally safe. Now, I'm sure you're aware of the fact that in almost every industry, the environment is the key word. A lot of industries are pushing more for environmental conscious practices, but even the horticulture industry is trying to use plant material and various things that do not have such a demand or drain the environment as far as any type of product like gas, oil, those types of things, as far as heating costs. And very seasonal product that's out now is poinsettias. And this is a new variety or cultivar called Freedom. It's just been released this year. It has very deep red bracts. It even has deeper green color as far as the leaves, but it's being sold with environmentally grown because of some of the practices that are different. Now, if you're familiar with poinsettias, you know that they need short days, long nights to incorporate any kind of triggering to get the color. Now, usually what is done commercially, they'll have equipment to drag black cloths over these early in the afternoon, so they'll have long nights to get this color. Well, these are a new variety that will turn red without any kind of day length response. And that's very encouraging, so there's not a lot of labor going into them to get them to color up. Now, one thing that we know is they're very early. They're earlier than most poinsettias. And the other interesting thing is that they're very dwarf form. They're naturally small, and that way the growers don't have to put on sprays or chemicals that are hormones to keep them small. And so that's very encouraging as well. And you'll see a lot of them out on the market this year, but the growers are having to get used to them because they're much earlier. The growers in our area are even selling them more as a Thanksgiving poinsettia than a Christmas because they were so early. But the color's real pretty, and again, that cultivar is called Freedom. So that's one you'll see that has an environmental emphasis on it this year. Now, if you're like me, you've probably put off Christmas shopping until the very last minute, and I'd like to show you some new products that are out on the market that might interest your gardening friends. Plus, some of them have a little bit of an environmental flair to them. Now, the first one is called an air-pressured sprayer, and it's actually been in use for several years over in Europe and just now being introduced into the United States. But what it does, it replaces the aerosol can, which many of you know, some of the fluorocarbons in products can harm the ozone layer. So basically what it could be used for is just, you could put water in it, use it for a mister, you could put your soap and oil mixes, fungicides, you could even put liquid fertilizers if you fertilize foliage of your plants, and you're not using an air pressured spray or an aerosol sprayer, you're using an air pressured. And how you get that is you fill the product in the top, you can see the controlling device in here. Then you just basically screw the top on. It has a cap on it, so it actually resembles an aerosol sprayer, but the difference is you pump it up from the bottom to get your pressure, very similar to a hand pump sprayer that we would use in the garden anyway. And then sure enough, it sprays very fine mist similar to what we would see with an aerosol can, although we don't have the harmful product. So this is a very nice one. An alternative, of course, it would be more for houseplants, smaller type things that you would want to use. Some of the recommendations that came with it even talked about using like Clorox mix in it that could be used to sterilize some of your products, those types of things. Now, about a year ago, we introduced to you the new Fisker line of hand tools. And you can see we had the wishbone clippers, the hand clippers, and we've put a lot of use to them. Well, they've expanded their line a little bit more with their stainless steel products and their very light plastic type handles, polyethylene type handles, and this one is a floral craft and snip, and you're seeing these start to show up in the garden centers quite a bit. And I think the aerosol or the air pressure spray will show up probably next year even more, but you can do it mail order. Now, a nice little thing is trying to keep up with your tools in the garden. So there's a lot of products coming out. This one by Master, or Garden Master it's called. You can clip it on your belt. It carries your tools. It's very handy. They also have one that goes around a bucket. They have aprons. There's several of those, and those are showing up in the garden center. And another one, when we're talking about tools that really interests me, was one called the Winged Weeder. Now, the purpose of this one is the shape of it. You can see the shape, the wing, and it's also got very sharp edges. And instead of putting a lot of energy and pulling with the hoe, you actually go forward, and so there's not as much stress on it. It's very lightweight, and it really does a nice job in getting down to the root system to dig up any of the weeds. And you can see it comes in 3 different sizes, again with a very sharp edge. It's really a nice design. Came from Idaho Falls, is where the individuals that actually introduced us to the market. So this is the first year that it's been out. Again, it's very easy to use and a nice alternative and not nearly as much the effort. Plus you can invert it and use it to actually make a seed row for planting corn or any of your vegetables. So it has a lot of uses, a very nice alternative as far as tools. Now I always like to show you things too that you can involve your kids with, and this one is called Root View, and it comes in the kit, the styrofoam, even with the seed, and you can plant in here. We have radishes, carrots, and beets, but the purpose is you can remove this cover, has a clear plexiglass, and you can actually see the root system as they develop. When you water them, the water stands down here in the bottom of the tray. So as they increase in size, you'll actually see the root crop starting to develop. It's a great tool to use for the kids to teach them, because usually we don't see below the ground level and see what's going on. It kind of reminds me of the ant farms in a way, although it's just to use with kids and the plants and using for the roots. So this one would last where you could get several uses out of it, and I think it'd be a great one to use in many of your plant science programs in schools, etc. So you can see there's a lot of new ideas out on the market, a lot of them environmentally conscious as far as their aspects and selling point. So be sure and look around. You might find some great buys this time of year for your gardening friends too. Well, that's all the time we have today. Be sure and join us again next weekend here on Oklahoma Gardening.
Local